This is Reid's Reviews. Today let's check out this Boss RC500. This is a dual track looper. You can record each of the tracks independently one of another. You can put down unlimited overdubs independently on each of the tracks, and you can also sync the tracks as well as play the tracks along with the rhythm features that are included with this pedal, which I think they've done a fantastic job with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you how it works. I'm going to demo it, and then I'll give you my thoughts about this pedal. All right, first let me get into the different colors that are going on here with regards to the lights. This will help you kind of know what's happening. In most cases, they're consistent. In a couple, there are some differences in the meaning of the color, and I'll get into that in a second. But in general, when you see this dark blue, and you can see a little bit better if you look at the reflection of my fingernail, you can see the color of this light a little bit better maybe than even the light itself. And it's a dark blue. And basically that's saying that, hey, nothing is recorded on this pedal yet. And specifically, nothing is recorded on track 2, nothing is recorded on track 1, and nothing is recorded on memory slot 1. The thing that's a little bit off from this color scheme is this track select light. The dark blue means that you're on track 2 or the secondary track. When it's red, like you can see right now, that means that it's on the primary track, and the primary track is active, and you can see that because this is blinking. Again, let me go over to track 2. You can see that's blinking. This changed to a dark blue color. If I go to track 1, it's blinking. This changed to a red color. So you just kind of have to separate your mind with the color that's going on with this particular switch, because it's really just toggling between these two. All right, so now let me put something down on track 1, and we'll see what happens to the colors that are going on with these lights. Okay, you'll notice that after I recorded that, this turned to kind of a light blue, and this turned to a white color, white, and this stayed at that navy blue and or the dark blue, because we haven't touched track 2 yet. We've just recorded in track 1. So that's kind of cool. It's also kind of cool that this changed to a lighter blue, telling us that, hey, there's something recorded in one of these tracks or both. So that later, you know, maybe when we've moved to another memory slot and we're traversing between memory slots, we can see which ones have something that or not quickly by the color of the display. Light blue means there's something there. Dark blue means there's not something there. All right, so I put something down in track 1. I'm going to go ahead, bounce over to track 2. I'm going to record something. All right, nothing fancy, but got the point across. I basically recorded something independently in track 2. Now, if I want to hear them both together, there's a couple ways I can do that. One is I can bounce over to track 1, hit play, bounce back over to track 2, and hit play. You'll note, too, it maybe doesn't sound that great, and partly because I was playing track 2 without even hearing track 1. Okay, so if I want to stop both of these tracks, I can do it by pushing stop. I'm stopped this track. You'll note that the green means it's currently playing. So I'm going to bounce over to track 1 and stop that. Now, instead of having to go back and forth each of the tracks to get to stop them and play them both at the same time, if you want to get them in sync, you can do that by holding down the track select button in a couple seconds, and it turns into kind of a fuchsia color. You can see it kind of reflecting off my fingernail there that it's a fuchsia color. Now, these two act on both of these tracks at the same time. So both of them are playing, they're both green, they're both blinking. I hit stop, they both stop at the same time. And that's kind of nice. It kind of keeps you from having to keep on pushing this back and forth to get things to work. You'll need to note, though, and it makes sense, that you can't record when these are synced together. And the purpose for that is really, this is two independent tracks, and you don't want to record the same thing on each. I mean, the whole idea of having two different tracks is to have to record something different on each. And so basically, when they're synced, you don't record. It's basically a syncing to help you start and stop the tracks together if you want to do that. Now, there is one other feature that it lets you do with them together, and that is to basically delete both of them at the same time. So if I hold down the stop button, you'll notice these blinked red. Now everything is back to this dark blue. And currently I still have them synced. But hey, if I go, okay, now I want to record, it's not going to do anything because, like I said before, you can't record when the two tracks are synced together. You have to unsync them again, kind of by holding this by a couple seconds, release. Now it turns into the color of the track that is active. All right, so let me show you quickly how to record on track 2 while listening to track 1. I'll just kind of put something down again. Okay, so I want to listen to that now while I play track 2 so that I can kind of play something that sounds good with it. And I'll do that by going ahead and hitting play, switching over to track 2. Now I can listen. When I hit it here, it's going to start recording. It will kind of punch in whenever I hit play, but then I can start playing wherever I want to. All right. I need to stop track 1. There we go. So I intentionally went for some extra measures on that second track just to show you that you can have more measures recorded on one than the other. So basically, track 1, I've got 2 measures recorded, but then I don't know how many I recorded, but it was at least 4 on track 2. Okay, now if I want to get them both, like I showed you a second ago, if I want to get them both, to work together, so I can hit them, I can hit play with just one button. I'll do that again by pushing here. This turns to that fuchsia color. I'm going to go ahead and hit play. You'll notice that track 2 is playing more measures while track 1 just continues to loop the 2 measures that were recorded. Gives you some flexibility. It's kind of nice. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and hit stop here. They're synced, therefore they both deleted at the same time, which is nice. Okay, I'm going to push this down for a couple seconds. Now it's going to have track 1 activated, and I can start recording something in track 1 if I wish. Kind of some cool features, allows you to get some creativity, a little more creativity maybe than just having a 1-track looper. All right, so now let's look at some of the settings that you can apply to each of the tracks individually. I'm going to record something briefly. All right, not pretty, but just for the purposes of illustration, let's go ahead and push this button here. Now, the first item is something that will allow you basically to play back what you did in reverse. Okay. The next item is turning on some effects that can be added at the memory slot level. So I'll go into those in a bit, but basically there's some basic effects that can be set at the memory slot level or the global level for a particular memory slot. And here we can say, hey, I want that applied to track 1 or not. One shot. One shot is basically when you play back a loop, it doesn't loop. It just plays it one time. So it's going to stop right here. Okay. Oops. The level is tied to this knob. You can see that as I move this, it will actually change the value there. If you wanted to, you could also change the value with this knob. And something that might be helpful to know is that if you push down, really anytime you're using this knob to change parameter setting, if you push down while you turn it, it will do it in increments of 10. This is whether you want your track 1 to play back more out of the right or the left, or you want it to be centered. The start is when you play back. How do you want it to play back? Do you want it to play back immediately? Or do you want it to kind of fade in? That was kind of subtle, but those are the two options. With stopping, you've got three options. You can say, hey, when I hit stop, I want it to stop immediately, or I want it to fade out. Okay, or I want it to stop when the loop ends. So if I did it right at the beginning, it'll stop there. Okay. I'm going to do immediate. You can specify before recording, so when this would be dark blue, meaning it would be empty, you could go ahead and specify the number of measures that you're going to record on the track. And it will automatically stop you from being able to record more than that number of measures. Now, if you do not set this and you just start recording on a track and you come in and you look here, it will have figured out the number of measures that you actually recorded. This will sync track 1 and track 2, and it will play back what you recorded in track 1 and track 2 at the same time relative to each other with regards to where you recorded them in the beats of a measure. So it's not something that you would use if you wanted to be able to say, let's record something on track 2 and just punch it in and out while track 1 is playing. That wouldn't really work with these being synced. In this case, I have it off, and it would allow me to, like I said, I could do a little ditty or something. And anytime I pushed track 2 to play, it would just punch it right in and not wait for it to hit the particular part of the measure that I played it in. This next item is the tempo sync, and it's the tempo of the memory slot. So when I go to a slot that's empty and I set the tempo, if I want the track to be synced with that tempo, I can go ahead and say on. If I want to be able to record at any tempo that I want on a track, regardless of what the kind of global tempo is set for on that memory slot, I'll go ahead and turn this to off. There's multiple inputs that you can, or ways that you can input sound into this RC500. You can do it through a mic. You can do it through this 1/4 inch. There's also MIDI. And if you want to change what actually gets applied to track 1, or what can be recorded on track 1, you would do it through this. I just have it all, so basically anything that is input as a signal would be recorded if I had selected record. Similarly, this tells me, hey, what channel is it going to send the output of this track to? And you've got two choices, A or B. Okay, that's all for the menu items associated to an individual track. If I click here, and I'll get the same set of options. Okay, so we've got two buttons here that are related to rhythm. The tempo button is pretty straightforward. When you push it down, it says what the current tempo is set to. You can change that either by twisting this knob or by tapping the tempo button. And you can see it change. When I change it with this knob, if I push down, like I mentioned before, it can go in increments of 10. I can also move it so that I'm changing the tempo portion after the decimal. And I would do that by clicking here and then moving this. Okay. That is pretty much it for the tempo button. The rhythm button has a few different features to it. One is it indicates whether or not the rhythm is currently armed or will play when you start recording. Right now it's set to off. There's no light here. When I click it one time, you'll see it blinking. It's green and it blinks. That's saying that it's armed. So if I started to record something, the beat is there, the rhythm is there. If I were to push it again, it will just be on permanently all the time. So then when I hit record, I can come into it and I'll be right in line with the beat because I'm listening to it at that time. Okay. Now, there's also menu items for the rhythm, and there's quite a bit. And you access those by pushing down this and holding it for a couple seconds. Okay. So now I'm into the menu for rhythm. This is simply the level. Obviously, it allows you to change the level that you want the rhythm to play back at. This is the reverb level of the rhythm. Pretty straightforward. Now, this is some really cool stuff. It's given you a bunch of different options as far as what you want the beat to sound like. That is a really awesome feature that they've included in here. I'll go ahead. Let me just put it on funk. There we go. You can hear what that sounds like. All right. Now, the next thing is variation. So within a particular rhythm pattern, which is what we'd signed before, which was the funk, I can say I want it to sound slightly different. Let me play this back. Let's just do the sound here. If I do it to variation B, you can tell it's a little more complicated. Variation A is more simple. This shows when the variation will change from A to B or from B to A. But you have to be able to trigger that change. Obviously, there isn't anything right here unless you configured it to maybe do the variation change, maybe one of these knobs, and I'll show you in a bit how to do something like that. But you could also have an external foot switch that would basically, when you pushed it, it would change the rhythm variation from A to B. So this is basically saying, hey, if you trigger the change from A to B or B to A, when is that going to take place? Is that going to happen at the end of the measure? The end of the loop. And those are your two options. This is also cool with the new loopers that Boss has done. There's some really awesome kits that they've provided. So this is not something that they've really had in the past. There's just a lot of variation here, some emulation. So let's just keep it on standard or studio. Now you can set the measure or the time signature. Now here's the important thing to realize. If you've already started recording, then it's got a time signature. You can set this beforehand, and let's go ahead and show you that. Okay, so I just cleared out my tracks. Now it's going to let me change the time signature. It's quite flexible. It has a decent range of time signatures that you can select. All right, for rhythm, the start options are, I can have it start playing the rhythm when either I start recording or I start playback. If I want to change it to something like record and this is useful maybe if you want to kind of have your own tempo and you don't want to be constrained to the beat, that you would basically record something, and then after you stopped recording and played back, it would start playing the rhythm. If you want it to begin before looping, you can do that as well. What happens is, again, I need to arm the rhythm. Then I would push this. And you'll notice this is blinking. That's saying, hey, I'm not recording yet, but it's playing the rhythm before I start recording. So then if I hit this again, it would actually be recording with the rhythm. Okay, so let's do it loop start. And when will the rhythm stop? These are the settings here. So is the rhythm going to stop when I hit stop for the loop? Is the rhythm going to stop when I'm recording something and I hit stop? Those are the two options. This is a super nice feature. It's basically a count-in. I really like to have this on. You only have the option of doing one measure count-in. So in a way, it's kind of similar to having the rhythm start before you record, except for that option would do it indefinitely until you press this button again. You know, you saw the button was blinking, or this light was blinking red. Push it again, that's when it would start recording. This is a more constrained in the sense that it will do it for exactly one measure, and then it will let you start recording. I really like having a count-in. Okay. I'm going to leave it at that. Now, this is when you're playing. Do you want a count-in to happen before it plays back what you've recorded? There may be some cases where you'd want that, but it's kind of an interesting one. All right, so the drum fills section. Full disclosure, I haven't been able to hear any drum fill when I've selected on. I haven't been able to hear any difference between on or off. There may be some situation where it becomes more evident, but just full disclosure, I cannot tell the difference. So I know that it is what it says, but at the same time, don't get too frustrated if, like me, you don't hear anything. This next part is, it basically lets you choose how complicated you want the drum, the rhythm part to be. Each one of these layers adds kind of an additional rhythm piece. So you can hear, this is with all of them on. Oops. You can see it took away a little bit. Takes it away a little bit more, but you get the point. Okay. So that's the 4 parts. This is a basic EQ. You can change the level of your lows and your highs. And that's it for the menu items for the rhythm. Similar to how you can change some settings for a particular track, there is a memory slot level menu that you can play around with. Basically, this is going to be kind of a global setting that will be applied to both of the tracks for that particular memory slot. Now, the first menu item is record. If I click there, then you'll see the different options that can be changed that relate to record. This is basically the overdub feature. So if I've recorded something and then I want to lay something down on top of that, do I want it to just put it on top, or do I want it to erase what I've done? And let me show you really what that means. So currently I have something recorded. Now if I want to overdub, you can see it erased what I had recorded and replaced it with what I had overdubbed. It will basically erase your first layer. All right, so let's go back into here. I like to be able to do multiple overdubs. The nice thing about having the ability to overdub is you can really lay down as many layers that you want on top of a particular loop. So okay, so I've got layer 1. Now if I want to put something on top of it, I'd play it back and then I'd push again. This is going to turn yellow. This is going to put on that will put on another layer. Now I hit stop. I'll play them back. They'll both be together. Now the neat thing is you can peel off the last overdub. You can't peel off any before that. So if I was to do another overdub, you wouldn't be able to remove the one that you're hearing now. But I can remove the most recent recorded overdub by holding this down. You can see it went away. So that's a neat feature. All right. So this shows you when you hit record and then you press record again, what will happen next. It can go directly into play, or you can see that there's an option where it will go into overdub directly. I really like to go into play so that when I record something, I can listen to it play back. Often I'm not ready to jump right into an overdub, but if I were to have changed it to this, if I record something, and I hit that, it goes into overdub. So now it's actually recording, and I might not be ready, but it's an option. I'm going to go ahead and set it to that. Okay, quantize. Quantize is where if you have a certain tempo and time signature, the pedal will take what you play and try and squeeze it into that definition, your time signature and your tempo. So if you're a teeny bit off, let's say you may play something a little bit at the end or a little bit after the end of a particular measure, the quantize will try and kind of rope it into the previous measure. If you want that feature on, you can set this to on. Auto record is something that I really like. It allows you to kind of sit there, and then you don't have to push the button to record. It just listens to your guitar basically. Oh, it listens to your guitar. But since I have the count in, it obviously didn't record immediately. It did the count in and then started recording. I'll leave that on. This is the auto record sensitivity. So, you know, if I'm often accidentally touching my strings and I don't want that to trigger the record, I can set this to a different sensitivity level. Auto record source. So if you don't want the auto record to be triggered by anything that you have coming into your pedal, so for example, if you have a mic and you don't want the auto record to be applied to the mic, you can set it specifically to the instrument. And in some cases that might be helpful because a mic, you can't sometimes control the sounds that are made inadvertently and would trigger an auto record. Loop length. This, if you don't set this ahead of time, ahead of recording the first track, then it will be set automatically according to the number of measures that you record on a particular track. If you want to, before you start recording the first track of a memory slot, and you want to go in here and specify the number of measures for that for that loop to be, you can go ahead and do that here, and it will basically constrain it. You start recording your first track, it will stop it after the number of measures that you specify. Okay, that's it for the record section of the memory menu. All right, so now let's look at the play menu items for the memory button. I can go into those, push down here. The play mode is really interesting, and it's applicable to this because it's a multi-track looper. If I have it in multi-mode, that will allow me at any time to play, track 1 and track 2, either together or separately, or bring track 2 in halfway through the measure of track 1. Basically lets me play them simultaneously. If I have it in single, it will only let me play one track back at a time. Now, the next setting here is specifying when you want it to switch or flip-flop tracks. And immediate is, let me put something down here. We've got this on single, we've got this on single, and I'm just going to show you what it does. Oh, I got an auto record. Okay. Recorded something on track 1. Now let me record something on track 2. Something basic, not trying to impress anybody. Okay, so now I've got this on single mode, as you can see here. And if let's say I want to start off with, actually let's start off on track 2. I want to play track 2. Okay. Now if I switch to track 1 and hit play, before when it was set to multi, it would allow them to play together. But now when I hit play, you'll notice that it switches over immediately to track 1 and stops track 2. You can change this so that when you move back over to track 1 and hit play, it won't actually switch from track 2 to track 1 until the end of the track 2's loop. Those are the two options. I'm going to change this back to multi. Level is the level of the memory slot, or the global level. And fade time is if you have set the stop or start to fade in or out. This is actually where you can change like how long of a fade in you want, and it can get really specific. So that's kind of cool. This all start is really applicable to MIDI. When a MIDI signal is sent, you can basically say, hey, I want both tracks to start, or you can specify whether you just want one or two, track 1 or 2 to start when your MIDI signal comes. The track chain is really kind of how the track signals are interacting with one another. Parallel is where they're both kind of independent and they're both not really impacting each other. If you change it to series, track 1 will color the track 2 as it's added to the track 1 signal. In general, only people that are really sensitive, or if you've done some kind of interesting sounds or recordings, will this kind of be something that you'll need to mess with. So that's the last of the play memory items. Let's move to the next, the loop effects. I talked a little earlier how you could actually turn loop effects off for the tracks independently, but this is where you'd actually set what you want the loop effects to be. And then again, this would be applied to both tracks by default. If you want to turn it off, you can through the way that I showed you earlier. But if I want the effects on, I'll switch it here. And then the type of effect is going to be available here. The vinyl flick is kind of like it's like stopping the recording, like if you were to grab like a record that's spinning and kind of stop it, slow it down. But basically there's some effects that you can add. This relates to the scatter effect. Okay, so that is it for the loop effects. All right, let's go into the next item, which is the rhythm settings that you can globally set for a particular memory slot. We've got the level of the rhythm playback, reverb, and these are the same or similar to the ones that you would set here. So this is kind of another way to change it. All of these are exactly the same. Okay, so these are the same as when you're setting them here, but this will be setting them globally for both of the tracks on a particular memory slot. Okay, so the next menu item is control. And control in general, there are a lot of different things that you can do with this. I'm not going to go into every single one of them, but in general, what you're doing is you're saying, what are these three switches going to do? And if you have up to 2 external foot switches, what will those do? You can change this from recording and playing to doing something else, or for this from stop to something else. And if you have some external foot switches, you can assign certain functions to those. Also, if you have an expression pedal, you can assign certain functions to the expression pedal. This is pedal 1, 2, and 3. This would be external foot switch 1, external foot switch 2, and then your expression pedal. And then, of course, to change what they do, you would go in here and change it to whatever you wish. Now, the next one is assign, and this is actually a sign. There's a sign 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there's 8. And it's kind of interesting because this is really where you can get granular. You can assign the different functions of pretty much everything here to do something. And you can also assign MIDI channels to operate the different functions on this pedal. Again, I'm not going to go into the details of everything that can be done here, but it is super flexible in what you can set up and change. All right, so at the end here, we've got name, and this is essentially for a memory slot. Instead of it saying 0, 1, you can have it actually have a name, and you can call it whatever you want. You would do that just by rotating the various characters there to be whatever you want. Okay, so now let's go over the menu, the main menu items. Here we have general. Inside of general, we have the display contrast. The display mode is basically what is shown in this screen. I currently have it as beat. You'll note that when I'm playing something back, this is showing the beat of the measure. There's a lot of different options that you can choose. You can have the beat plus position, and position is going to be the position within the loop. So again, if I go out here, I can show you what that looks like. So I've got two things going on, the beats within the measure and the position within the loop. And there's a few more, like the name or the number of the phrase along with the position of the loop. Status, this will tell you, okay, is it recording or playing? You can actually have it specify the individual tracks. So let's look at that real quick. Currently track 2 is not playing. So in general, there's just a lot of different things you can have shown in the display. I'm going to go ahead and just leave it at what it was at, which was beat. It just shows you the beats within a measure. Okay. All right. When you're undoing or redoing a overdub, this will tell you how that will be triggered. And so is it going to happen? Is the undo or the redo going to happen after you release the button once you push it down? Or is it going to happen after you've held it or while you're holding it? Kind of an interesting feature. I can just show you really quick what that is doing. So if I have it on hold, that means that if I'm playing this, I'm going to overdub. Actually, I want to undo or redo. So first of all, I need to overdub something. Okay. Now, I have it on hold. So if I want to undo it, it happens while I'm holding it. If I want to redo it, it's going to happen while I'm holding it down. So if I switch this to release, if I push it down, so here you hear the overdub. So when I release is when it's going to be taken off. Okay, so that is it for the general section. All right, so preference. This right here lets you decide whether you want the switches, these three, and the two external control switches, as well as an expression pedal, if you have those, will let you specify whether you kind of want to override what the system settings are, or if you want to do what is specified in each of the individual memory slots control menu item. And we went over that briefly a second ago, but basically you can change all of these to perform a different activity than or function than what is specified here. And this again is for each one of these three. And then if I have an external foot switch, 1 or 2, and then the expression pedal. With regards to external foot switches, you can have one external foot switch. It can either have one switch or two switches on that particular foot switch. Okay. MIDI. This lets you assign all the things that you'd ever want to with regards to MIDI. So I'm not going to go into the details of the MIDI. This is just where you would make the changes that you'd want for assigning different channels, different functions, as well as other features associated with MIDI. Extend. This is actually a really important menu item. So basically a memory extent is you defining a group of, and they have to be sequential, a group of memory slots that you want to be able to traverse. And when you go beyond the top one, it won't continue to go up to 99. It will basically loop around at 1. So you could say, I want memory slots 1 through 9 to be defined as a group, and I can assign it to extent 1. So I could assign it to extent 1, and I could have it go to, like I said, 9. And so if I had an external foot switch, I could then use that external foot switch and go up, up, up to kind of rotate from 1, 2, 3, 4. Similar to what I'm doing here, but when you actually pass 9 with the external foot switch, it would go back to 1. Just remember that it only works with an external foot switch. Clearly, when I go past 9, it's not rotating back to 1. Storage is essentially when you want to connect to a computer. you would go in here, you'd push down, and then it would be trying to connect to a computer via the USB. Okay. Factory reset. With factory reset, you can reset all the memory slots so that basically you clear out all the stuff that you've recorded, all the loops. Or you can specify it to reset kind of the default settings to the factory settings, or you can just have it do both. And that will basically clear off anything you've recorded as well as return everything back to the factory settings. Okay, and that's it for menu. The last part here is just the right section. And it's super important to realize something with this pedal. Let's go back to memory slot 1. And I'm going to show you what happens if you think you've recorded something and you move to a different memory slot and you haven't written it to the memory, that it will disappear. So basically, let me show you. Okay, so let's go ahead and record something. Okay. Now, this is turned white, and that's white. That means there's something, and this is light blue. That means there's something recorded in this memory slot. Now, you might think that, hey, if I go ahead and move to memory slot 2 and then came back to 1, I would still have this recorded, but guess what? It doesn't. It erases it, and you can't get it back. It's gone. So you have to remember that when you're going to record something, that you have to write it by pushing both of these down at the same time, pushing that down. And it's kind of neat here. You can actually say the default is writing it to the memory slot that you're currently on. So this would be memory slot 1. But if I wanted to, I could actually write it to another memory slot. And in a way, this is kind of like a copy and paste. So if I also wanted this, which is currently on memory slot 1, if I wanted to copy and paste it into 2, I could go ahead and do that. Voila, there you go. One thing that you can also do is delete. So instead of write, if I want to clear this second memory slot that I just copied stuff into, I can do that. That's great. Okay, so finally we've come to the last item here, which is the input. As the name implies, it's all related to the inputs or even the outputs. You can turn phantom power on if you want to. You can specify for the mic in how it gets routed out of the pedal. You know, here it's both A and B channels. You can change how you want the instrument to go out of the pedal. So if you wanted to, for whatever reason, the mic to go out of channel A and the instrument to go out of channel B, you could set these to do that. These are both set to go out both. And similarly with the rhythm, I can make those changes. This is mic noise suppression. This is instrument noise suppression as far as the input signal, how much noise suppression you want there. Okay, and lastly, this peak source. This is basically going to tell you when you're putting an input signal into the RC500, what is going to cause this light to change. So basically it's saying, hey, I'm getting something and it's not an overload, so it's green. And I set it here so that basically anything that comes in, whether it's a mic, an instrument, MIDI, whatever, it will trigger that sound indicator or peak indicator. I can change it to be mic, instrument, various different things I can change it to. Hey, if you're into guitars and you love effects, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. I'm constantly reviewing older and new pedals, and when I do, you'll be the first to know. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.